Very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. At 12:37 is the time. Tom Slater is still with me, editor of Spiked Online. I'm delighted to say we're joined in the studio. Lots of guests in the studio today. It's really nice. Lovely to see you, Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, who's an historian and commentator. Lovely to have you actually in the studio. Very significant day, and actually it's interesting. One of the most significant things happening today, marking VE Day commemorations, the 80th anniversary of all this week, really, even bank holiday right through to Thursday, the actual 8th of the month. Is literally, I can see it across the river. We're right near Tower Bridge. We've got the Tower of London, where the King and the Queen are visiting that. I mean, it's brought back again. Just amazing ceramic poppy exhibition. And I have to say, I saw it the first time around. It's just incredibly moving and very, very beautiful. But that's not the only thing that's happening today. And of course, we had all these amazing events over the weekend, the fly past and everything else. But talk us through all the major events of the week.
Yes, so this is day 2 of a 4-day celebration of the 80th anniversary of VE Day. As you say, today we have the unveiling of the ceramic poppies at the Tower of London, which were originally unveiled in 2014 to mark the centenary of the First World War. Those were 800,000, now they're only 30,000, and they're formed in the shape of a heart here to symbolise the open wound when the Tower of London itself was damaged by bombs. But key also today, they're going to light up landmarks across London and across the whole country, from Belfast City Hall to Cardiff Castle, just as happened on VE Day itself, because people must remember, for 5 years there was a blackout. No lights were allowed. You had to have blackout curtains in your houses, changing the lamps on your cars. The ARP, the air raid, would come and knock on your door if they could see a chink of light. And suddenly on VE Day, everything became aglow again. You know, Leicester Square, Piccadilly Circus, if you're in the West End, Shaftesbury Avenue, Soho. But all around the country, the searchlights that had scanned the skies, they made themselves into the V for Victory symbol, which became iconic, and then they turned their lights onto the cathedrals and the castles of the country. So we're going to have a reenactment of that.
And we've talked so much in recent years with these such important commemorations going on, in Armistice Day as well. We have fewer and fewer of the heroes who I mean, watch their comrades fall to die for our future of our country. But so many of these incredibly brave men and women who are thankfully still with us, but fewer and fewer to every single event. And of course it was noticeable, wasn't it, the royal family gathering at Buckingham Palace on the balcony for the fly past yesterday, that there was no member of the royal family who was actually served in the Second World War being there. And of course, you know, the Prince Philip, important role, the Queen, the late Queen, an important role back at home. And it's interesting, you talk about this image, I had a big smile on my face when we talk so much about the incredible sacrifices that our armed forces took, but this was an entire, you know, whole nation effort, and the impact on ordinary men, women and children back home in the UK was huge. And some of the images of the relief, the joy that people felt when this absolute horror finally ended, well, in Europe here at least.
Yeah, that's crucial. Well, the first thing, of course, this wasn't the end of the war. There was still 3 months more to fight till we had victory over Japan Day on August the 15th with the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But you're quite right. I mean, people need to understand this was the biggest celebration in British history, VE Day, because for the peoples of Europe, the war was over. 6 long years, which had seen 35 to 50 million people killed, including 350,000 British armed forces. It liberated, of course, the Channel Islands, only part of the British Isles to be occupied by the Nazis. And it meant for millions of people at home, they'd be reunited with their fathers, their brothers, their sons. And, of course, also for so many people in the country, it was a moment when finally they realised no more would Britain be devastated by aerial bombardment. You know, not only was London destroyed, but Liverpool, Birmingham, Southampton, so many cities. 95% of the buildings in Hull were damaged or destroyed in the Blitz. 40,000 people died in that country. So that's why Churchill came out onto the balcony of the Ministry of Health with the crowds assembled there, and he said, "This is your victory. In all our long history, we have never seen a greater day than this."
And it was a whole country event, and it's fascinating to when we've seen the event, the horrific invasion of Ukraine. And indeed what's happening, the massacre on 7th of October in Israel, when you see polls of, you know, of Brits and indeed Americans, like, would you be willing to fight for your country? How many people, particularly young people, say they wouldn't be willing to fight for their country? And again, it's one thing, isn't it, to talk about a far-off war, like would you be willing to fight for Britain in Iraq or Afghanistan? It's very different from would you be willing to actually to protect your nation state? And I find it flabbergasting that people wouldn't be. People say nothing's worth dying for. Oh, there are lots of things that are worth dying for. And we see people of Ukraine and people of Israel, understanding the need of that. And we've got to talk about this threat from Russia. We've had alleged terrorist plot and arrests made involving Iranians as well. The threat right now is very real, and these are moments where we can unite as a nation, but also we need to talk not just about our past, but about the present and talk about the future as well. And that's something you've done a lot as a commentator on sort of, we say, woke issues, but actually on really important British values and cultural issues, and as a historian as well, being able to understand the significance of those, because it seems to me one of the key ways we honour the sacrifice that was made by the men and women who died in the war, in all the wars, but particularly in the Second World War, is that we protect the values and the freedoms and the culture that they were trying to protect from the Nazis.
And that's been one of the themes of V-Day, actually. Yesterday we saw the torch of peace passed on from a 100-year-old veteran, saying, these celebrations are not static. The fight for our freedoms and our liberties carries on and continues. We now have the longest war since the Second World War taking place within our continent. It is very much about that. Unfortunately, what we've had, of course, is we've had 30 years whereby British culture, British history and British identity have been systematically undermined. We've had ideological subversion being taught in our schools. So, and the complete erosion of our history, where our heroes have been denigrated and all of our achievements have been denigrated.
Yeah, Churchill's a racist and things like that.
So it's no surprise then that in the last 10 years we've seen a halving. From 2008, 80% of youth 18 to 24 were proud to be British. Today it's only 40%. So we call...
that's mind-blowing, isn't it?
It's
that the majority of young people are not proud to be British. Where would they be proud to be from, I wonder?
But there's no surprise.
Somalia?
If the media, the universities, academia, the government, if everybody is essentially saying that Britain is the source of all evil and the West is, you've got the original sin of slavery and all of the nonsense.
And the Industrial Revolution.
And the Industrial Revolution.
You're welcome, world.
The greatest leap forward in 12,000 years of human evolution, born right here in Britain. We get none of the praise for that. Everything has a negative origin to it. So why would you buy into Britain? And of course, you have to remember also a large part of the youth of today are ethnic minorities, and of course they're always taught now about systemic racism, about white privilege, and so again, it's much easier to cleave more to the more masculine, well-defined faith of your families than
although interestingly, actually, in terms of people being very sort of patriotic, actually, many ethnic minority groups in this country are actually some of the most patriotic in the country. What do you make of these stories about the British flag, so the Union flag, but also the St George's Cross? The Reform UK chairman of that the victories on Thursdays, 10 councils, county councils and others they're now in charge of, saying, look, no flag is going to fly on our buildings, no rainbow flags, no this flag, no that flag. It's going to be the Union Jack, or it's going to be the St George's Cross. I mean, Councillor Darren Grimes was just saying also, local county flags and things should be, that they're the only flags that should be flown on council buildings. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Well, and Darren is quite right. Traditional flags of Britain must be flown. So the county flags, the boroughs of London flags. I mean, if you're on a council level, you need to have some civic pride for your local areas. But we must...
I live in Camden. Do we have a Camden borough flag?
There's a Camden flag and coat of arms.
Oh, it's probably got a picture of a trans woman on it. It's probably got a trans woman and an illegal migrant on it, shaking hands or something.
But
in Camden.
We're fraying as a society, right? So identity politics is causing fissures in our society. We've got ethno-nationalist states developing in this country. We're becoming United Nations rather than a United Kingdom. We've got all the identity politics going on. We need to have an overarching British culture rather than prioritising minority.
Can I bring Tom Slater in listening to this? I mean, look, you're on the left, but do you feel patriotic?
Well, they wouldn't recognise me as
They wouldn't recognise you. No, do you know what a man and a woman is? Things like that, basically. You can count. But would you? I mean, would you? Do you feel strongly about the fact? Do you feel pride when you see the national flag?
Well, pride is not necessarily the way I'd put it. I'm certainly very grateful for having been born in this country where there's so much, the freedoms that we enjoy, which were built on the struggle not of just people who died in war, but also struggled domestically for our own rights and representation. I take a lot of inspiration from that long history of people.
Didn't just happen, guys.
No, absolutely. And it's one of those things where also recognising that, and this is something that in recent years, of course, the left have had complete problems with, is that if you really want a kind of cohesive society, then a shared identity as a nation is so much more important. It's actually it's the route to unity rather than division. They had it completely the other way around.
You'll find diversity is our strength. You obviously not read the memo. True tried to keep up with the programme, Mr. Slater, because